Hello, hello, hello. So we're just letting a little time elapse. We know that the lightning rounds just ended, but hopefully that gives you a little view of what we do, and hopefully we can make Kubernetes power all of that, which is pretty cool. So we'll get started. So thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here. We're excited to share our story and give you a little bit of insight of how Ticketmaster is thinking about Kubernetes and the whole container ecosystem. And hopefully that will give you some insights and things that you can bring to your companies and maybe inspire some other big companies out there. So I am Justin Dean. I'm the SVP of Platform and Technical Operations at Ticketmaster. I've been there for a year and a half, and I'm extremely passionate about building high-performance teams, high-performance organizations, and given the scale of complexity challenges in the Ticketmaster world, I think I'm in the right place. I'm also kind of nerdy about automating things that you might not should be automating, like beer and barbecue. So if you're into stuff like that, definitely hit me up. Pitmaster Pie on GitHub, kind of cool, clever.
And I'm Craig Amador, Senior Director of Core Platform at Ticketmaster. I've been there for 3 years, and my passions include emerging technologies such as Kubernetes and racing Porsches.
Cool. So why are we here? Why did we come here today? Really, we're excited about Kubernetes, where Kubernetes is going, and we really wanted to give some perspective on how does a company like Ticketmaster think about Kubernetes, right? Where does it fit? Where do we see it unlocking value for large enterprise companies? And ultimately, we're hoping that we can help foster more enterprise adoption of Kubernetes, the whole ecosystem of software out there, right? Because if we can share sort of our path and sort of how it leads into the business and our business strategy, hopefully it's relevant to some of your shops, other shops out there. Ultimately, hopefully, we hope that it will inspire some confidence in the ecosystem of the software, that it's enterprise caliber, and that you can use it to grow and expand your businesses, get more confidence, get more folks involved, and to sort of join up, share notes. Quick little history about Ticketmaster. So one thing, when you join the company, you immediately start to understand the gravity of the fact that we are a 40-year-old technology company, right? So we, digitalized tickets in 1976, built a ticketing system that is still in use today, still powers a lot of this, right? Just like any industry, like airlines or whatever, you build these things mainframe style, they don't go away, right? You may expand and add to them, but they're still part of your fabric, part of your story. In 2010, we partnered with Live Nation to become the world's largest live entertainment company. And then in 2013, we started to, as all industries, all companies started getting really disrupted, we made a conscious decision as a company that we were going to start disrupting ourselves. And part of that is what we're going to talk about. And then we're, like I mentioned, we're part of the Live Nation family. And on a revenue side, we do $25 billion worth of commerce on the platforms that we build, right? So we are hoping to sort of inspire that confidence of running $25 billion on Kubernetes, for instance. And we're a top 5 e-commerce site. This is becoming one of my favorite images because it really captures what it is that we do, right? Somewhere in the world, every 20 minutes, there's a Live Nation event. I mean, the scale of that statement, the gravity of that is pretty phenomenal, right? And to think about what we do at Ticketmaster and what our technologists do is build the tools and platforms to actually power this stuff, right? So it's a pretty cool job, to say the least. Our company mission is, we power unforgettable moments of joy. And a couple months ago, I took my family to that same Coldplay concert, which is why I had these on my phone, right? And then I saw, that image. I was like, I have to use these, right? Is this the same concert, right? And I started thinking about the gravity of what it is that we do, right? And sort of the tools, the platforms, the systems that we build, right? Seeing that those unforgettable moments of joy being on your family's faces, and that's my son's face, and it's sort of like the stuff that dad does at work is like providing that. It's like it's great, right? I think it's super cool. I thought I would share it. As a company, we do that for 530 million fans in 37 countries, right? So just like the video clip, if you saw that, right? I mean, it's concerts, sports, arts, venues, clubs, anything live, right? We build the tools that power that. I'm not going to go into this. This is the speeds and feeds slide. But one thing I noticed when you talk to people about Ticketmaster and sort of our scale of challenges, immediately people think about the website, Ticketmaster.com, right? If you've ever tried to buy tickets for something, let's say you wanted to go to Adele, you know what it's like dealing with the website, right? And it's not necessarily the technical portions of the website. It's the fact that there's not enough inventory to go around, right? But the story is so much larger than that, right, for us. And especially as we look at our platforms, as we look at how we roll out software, it's not just how do we make the website faster and better, right? It's how do we power all of the things required to run a Fortune 500 company and an enterprise that has to deal with all kinds of complexities that you would get from venues to, some of these, we do festivals. But, some of these stats are pretty telling, right? We do 500 million tickets sold. So think about the commerce and the back-end channels to make that happen, right? 21 million app downloads, 70 million unique hits to our website every month, right? And these are not quick, social hits, right? These are, I'm here to spend thousands and try to add, say, season tickets for your favorite football team, right? I mean, imagine one transaction of that scale, right? So it's definitely part of our fabric, part of our story, part of our challenge. So we also have a large competitive landscape that is a driver for what we're doing and a catalyst to force us to evolve, right? Just like every other business out there, right? So when you're the market leader, like we are in this space, we are in a position, it's great to be the market leader. It's also, a terrifying place to be, when you've got every company out there basically trying to get a portion of your business, right? So Ticketmaster, our ecosystem we have a huge surface area. One little piece of that surface area could be an entire business for a startup or a smaller company, right? So for us, what we have to do as a company is really, really, really optimize for speed and agility, right? We have to make ourselves very nimble and very competitive in, sort of the modern era, right? Not super easy in a large enterprise, as most of you are probably aware. On top of that, we have our fair share of tech complexities. One part of being a 40-year-old company and successful and a market leader is you end up with every era of software, right? And you may not believe this, but some of it's not ready for clouds and containers, right? So, that's part of our challenge, and part, the 70s tie-in, right, is the main nucleus of our ticketing system is VAX, right? So we've emulated it because you can't buy hardware on eBay anymore for VAX, but, how do you get VAX stuff to run inside of a Kubernetes ecosystem, right? So we're actually working on that. Craig will go into a little bit more details on that. But, we have every era of, whatever the architecture du jour was at that time, and then whatever API layers on top of that, right? And then we have a huge footprint of, what used to be fairly modern tech 5 years ago, right? We have a huge private cloud, Zen-based. I'm sure, you just look up what private cloud architectures were 5 or 6, 7 years ago. We have that. So we have this sort of modern technology complexity, but it runs a very successful business, right? We have 21 full-blown ticketing systems, 250 unique products that run on top of this stuff, right? This is, from every, 40-year-old company, part of that is you end up doing acquisitions. Everyone who's been through acquisitions understand how challenging that is, right? You may be in the same market, but you never really quite tie everything into one platform, right? So we have 21 of those full-blown businesses, 1,400 people in our technology organization, right? So that means that these 1,400 people really have to be up to speed on whatever platform stuff we put out there, right? So how we deliver them Kubernetes, right, is a factor when 1,400 people have to understand how to use those technologies, right? We have a huge private cloud that we're working on migrating, 22,000 VMs, 7 global data centers, 15,000 network endpoints. It's kind of a unique thing for us because, if you think about the Ticketmaster ecosystem, we have touch points everywhere. You walk into a venue, right? You go to the Seahawks game, you scan your ticket, boop. I mean, eventually that stuff routes in sort of our product space into our world. We validate the tickets in real time, right? So the complexity of dealing with that, and what does that look like inside of a, modern cloud / Kubernetes world, right? So definitely things that we're learning, and as we learn, hopefully sharing. And then a pretty unique phenomenon that we have in our particular business is we invite a self-inflicted DDoS as a business function constantly, right? Like, so if you want Beyonce tickets, and there's 100,000 of them, and there's 100 million people who want those tickets, and then there's 100 million people who want to make money on those tickets because they're $79, and they're selling on eBay for $1,700. So we have 1 million machines also hitting us. And then we make it harder on ourselves by also telling everyone what time they go on sale, right? Friday, 10 o'clock, be there. So set your clocks. So it just adds to the complexity of the complex business and web scale challenges. So recapping real quickly, right? Public company, pressures all across the board with that. Market pressure, highly competitive, right? We make money by selling software. We're a software company, right? We only make more money by selling more software and changing that particular software, right? We have a lot of legacy tech. Some of it's not ready for containers. Some of it's not ready for containers. And a lot of technical debt out there it takes to run a business of this size. And what that means is we spend a lot of time paying the interest rate on that debt in the form of operations. And like most folks, we want to have more people, future state strategic focused, not operating. And then we have Black Friday every day. So all roads for us as a company, right, to get better as a company, all roads lead to we must get faster, right? We have to be able to be nimble and quick, right? So for us, what that means is we have to simplify our platform, right? So how we get here, our sort of business case for this, right, is we need more revenue, more market share, right? That's probably everybody's challenge. We need better products, more features, better features, right? How do we get that? We have to deliver products faster, right? And our bet, and what we've been doing over the last couple years, is creating teams that are autonomous, right? So back to the other slide where you had the big shark and a bunch of fish. We are trying to create a bunch of fish inside of the big shark, right? So we have basically micro businesses that can run their own stacks completely, right? Instead of relying on every end of the business to release something. So autonomous product teams that can keep up, keep pace, and beat pace of startups. And in order to do that and enable that, we have to simplify the platform that we offer those teams to make it, something that they can consume, right? So every presentation has to have this meme. Here it is. We're working on simplifying all of our things. So how do we do it? And you might, I have to address the fact that there's this image of me in this 70s stuff. We had a recent 70s party, so we've got a lot of stock footage of this. We thought it tied in well. So our goal of all of this, right, is let the makers make, right? We have an amazing company of makers, creators, visionaries, innovators, people who can focus on delivering products to market, and that's where they should figure out the next big thing to power our business and to make it better. We do not want to burden them with also having to figure out how to deploy infrastructure around to support their software, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense to have the people who are delivering software to make money also deliver software to deliver software, right? So for us, it's about removing that. So we to get conviction as a company, in every big company, like you make a business case that, and make it a business case, not a technology case, right? So for us, it was, we need to be faster as a company. This is the solution, right? That way we get, clear executive level buy-in for, investing in Kubernetes, investing in rewriting some of our software to use these tools, right? If you don't have the entire company on board, it's not going to happen. So a little bit about our journey, how we got here. So big picture-wise, we've been disrupting ourselves for the last couple years. We are now in sort of this space towards the end, where we're in the public cloud adoption, and we're moving into our Kubernetes phase on top of that. So I'll go quickly through just to give you some context, because you can't just start at the Kubernetes phase, especially in a big company. So self-disruption, right? Everybody understands this, like change or disappear, right? So we got clear about that a few years ago. We've been disrupting the hell out of ourselves. We want to be Uber, not Yellow Cab, right? End of story. Don't be Yellow Cab. No offense to Yellow Cab folks out there. So part of that for us was what we call the lean transformation. We got super, super laser focused about what do we really need to get done as a company? Instead of working on 100 different things, work on 6 that are going to be meaningful in the market. Take the workforce and get them laser focused on those 6 to deliver, right? So what that looked like for us is we ended up with 65 plus cross-functional teams, those micro businesses, and practically what that looked like for us was merging product, dev, QA, UX, into these teams with a mission. They got really, really, really good at writing software. They did not get any better at delivering software, right? There's a huge gap between we wrote it and it's making money in prod, right? So all roads led to we're blocked by ops and we didn't scale up ops, So entered our DevOps phase. We DevOps hard as a company. I won't go into that. Everybody probably is wildly aware of the challenges of, the culture changes and everything. It's a tectonic shift for companies to deal with, especially ones with 40-year-old muscle memory. So we spent the last couple years really, really doing this to the point where org changes. And the big point was really taking the people who build and support a particular product, take them out of the central ops areas and put them closer to, embed them into the product teams, right? So you get holistic, self-sufficient business teams, right? Product teams, you build it, you run it, you own it, you optimize it, you monetize it, right? And then you hit them with the chargeback P&L stuff to keep them honest across the board. So we did that. And then that took us to our public cloud phase. And so, the relevance in the story there is we got to a point where we had these teams who were able to, they had, their destiny was in their hands. Their tools were not ready, right? So for us, we're in this public cloud phase right now where we're using it as a giant carbon filter for all of our products, right? We're thinking about it a little bit different than, we don't care who we're paying for resources, compute storage, it doesn't matter, right? It is the deep introspection of every product that we have, every piece of software, making it cloud native, doing whatever we need to do to get the ilities up to speed, right? You can't run in a public cloud or in a Kubernetes ecosystem if you don't have, the basics around your application in a modern fashion, right? It needs to be repeatable, scalable, reliable, all those things. Like resiliency is a huge one. So we're using that as our vehicle, right? So when we get out on the other side, our products are up-leveled. And where Kubernetes fits for us is the tooling and the self-service abilities, the APIs, the primitives that come with any public cloud service out there. They're complex, right? And then what we've found that as you give those tools to development teams, they have to learn them. And then they have to figure out, how do I deploy my infrastructure around my software, right? And that is a bad sort of use of their time, back to the makers want to make. So we're using Kubernetes as our simplification layer. Tell us where you want it to run, how many replicas, and we will abstract all of the complexities on the back end, right? We don't want hundreds of teams out there learning how to deliver infrastructure, right? Keep that stuff hidden from them. And with that, Craig will go into a little bit of more detail around all of that.
All right, so we're heading into the public cloud. And as Justin was saying, in order to do that, we got to simplify our platform. So in order to simplify it, you have to know what you have. So we started with 40 years of acquiring businesses that had their own products, creating our own businesses that had their own products, but we didn't have any canonical list of what our products actually were. So we created this product inventory management tool, which is this single location where we can go to get all the information about what we have and the state of it, who owns it, where it runs, who's operating it, and any other interesting pieces of information. And then we're, now that we know what we have, we can start to migrate it to the public cloud. And we're using this as an opportunity to really reevaluate all of these products and figure out which ones we want to take with us, which ones we want to improve, which ones we really don't feel like we need to invest more and may die in our data centers. And then we created this tech maturity model to have a common grading system for all of our products and where they are with their technology. So maybe some of them are using different coding practices that we'd like to improve, or they don't have HA models or something like that. This is giving us a common score for all of these different things. We open sourced this earlier today. It was on the Ticketmaster tech blog, and then it was also a guest post on the Apprenda blog. So you can take a look at it, see what's in there. There's like 40-something capabilities that are measured. We've got the cloud enablement team, and these guys are all about helping engineering teams migrate themselves into the public cloud. So we've got 250 products, so we've got 200-ish teams. We don't want 200 different ways of using the cloud. This team is full of people figuring out all of the public cloud solutions to our private cloud problems, and then documenting it and educating the rest of the workforce on how to do this stuff so that they don't have to go and figure it out on their own. And then we've got Kubernetes, right? So the CET team is all about getting people into the cloud as quickly as possible. That's definitely not the most optimal use case. So Kubernetes we see as a way of optimizing how we're using the public cloud and getting more rapid development and everything else we can get by leveraging the APIs and primitives in it. So the tech maturity model, as I was saying, it's got 40 capabilities in these dimensions of code. So that's like how you're writing your software, is the code reusable? Build and test, so like CI types of things, automated testing. Release, so how you deploy it to your different environments. Are you doing CD? Are you doing basically all those practices? Operate, so how you run it when it's there. Do you have monitoring, alerting, dashboards, that kind of stuff. And then optimize is how you come back around on the products, and are you resolving your root causes to business disruptions, and are you dealing with your tech debt? So that was open source today. You could check the Apprenda blog, or I think we probably tweeted it too. We've created this techmaturity.com portal that we have internally. It rolls up all of the information and all the scores for our different products into the different business verticals, so you can go and see how they're operating. We're going to open source a version of that later this year. It's currently being worked on. But what the tech maturity model allows you to do is quantify things that were used to be hard to quantify, like tech debt. So you can have this clear score and a roadmap of where you want to go to improve your product. This is what it looks like. If you look on the left-hand side, you can see that this team's score, they're better at coding, building, and testing, and optimizing than they were at, say, operating. So that highlights, maybe they have some improvements they can make to how they monitor and run their application, but they're really good at dealing with the problems that come up by not doing that. And then, as Justin was saying, we DevOps hard, and it shows here, the green line shows that their highest score is on DevOps practices. So if you look at this capability, level 1 is basically like throwing your application over the wall and letting some other team deal with it. And then level 4 is the full-on DevOps, where the engineering team owns and operates it in production. Here's one more screenshot from the tool. On the right-hand side, you can see this min cloud readiness column. So we picked a subset of capabilities that we felt like were critical for moving into the public cloud, and like what those levels should be before you even consider the migration. You can see that on this one, the first red one there on the right is the 3. We're saying you should have actively build and maintain unit tests, functional tests, critical path tests, and all these other tests, right? But these guys are a 1. They don't have any testing at all. So in order to move it into the cloud, you should know if it's working. And then the cloud enablement team. So this is a group of architects. They've been figuring out all the ways to use the public cloud rather than the ways we've been using the private cloud. So for example, if you're using Amazon and you've got a bunch of static content, you would probably want to put that in S3. But if you've got your own data center, you may have an NFS server where you throw all that kind of stuff in the server. So they've been figuring out all this stuff, documenting it, writing tools to make it easier, and enable our engineering teams to do that. We spent the first quarter working with the team and building the documentation and the tools. Second quarter, we gave it to another team, had them migrate themselves, and then kind of watched how it worked and filled in any gaps. And then in the third quarter, we unleashed it on the rest of the company so they can start doing it by themselves. It's gone pretty well. So the CT method was, hey, just get everybody moving, right? So there was only 3 demands we made. First one was to Dockerize the app. We figured if we can just get them to put it into a container, we could always come back and improve things underneath it. We said run it on CoreOS. We're huge fans of CoreOS, and the one thing that CoreOS Linux gives you is like a container running appliance, so that you don't have to go and get into like the worlds of chefs and puppets and Ansibles and that kind of stuff. And we were saying terraform the cloud infrastructure because we didn't want people going and building a bunch of custom-built infrastructure for their application through the UI and then not being able to reproduce it. So this definitely has some challenges that come along with it, right? Developing with Terraform is really slow. It's got to use the Amazon APIs. You got to wait for EC2 to spin up, that kind of thing. We're launching all of our containers with cloud in it, and that's not good at all, right? Every time you need to change something, you have to change an auto-scaling group, wait for a bunch of stuff to change, and then it's a totally inefficient use of the cloud resources because we're firing them up these VMs, and we're spinning up the Docker containers on top of it. We're getting this one-to-one mapping, and we're not being able to do any kind of compaction. So that's where we see Kubernetes coming in and helping, right? So there was people all over the company starting to use Kubernetes within their own teams just as a way of deploying their application and managing it. The community is great. We used it in a POC to solve a problem with OpenTSDB, and I'll talk about that in a second. I really think it's way ahead of everything else that's out there right now, right? There's some other stuff, but really not quite this, what Kubernetes has. The APIs, the primitives are all awesome, and it's getting us better compaction of our EC2 instances. So this POC, OpenTSDB, if you're not familiar with it, is a lot like Graphite or InfluxDB. It's a time series database. So we pump in about 500,000 metrics per second into it. We use it for all of our monitoring when we're doing these ticket sales. But what would happen is everybody would go to it during a ticket sale, and then we would have our own internal DDoS, right? So the services would get overwhelmed. They'd lock up or crash, and somebody would have to manually go in there and bring it back up. By putting it into Kubernetes and leveraging the pod health checks, Kubernetes can catch that for us and bring it back up for us. So it took something that we don't have to go in there and manually manage it anymore, right? It just kind of does its own thing. It's great, but it's not perfect. We've had some problems with it where like the automated CoreOS operating system would upgrade, but the services with Kubernetes wouldn't come back up by themselves. We've tracked some bugs down. We haven't looked into it too closely yet. And then we got the host. So the host is the original ticketing engine that powers Ticketmaster. It runs on a VAX. We've been emulating that for a few years now because you can't buy these things. You can't even find a color photo of one. But now that we've got it running in an emulator, we're trying to run it in a container. And once we get into a container, we want to run it on Kubernetes, which may seem like a crazy idea. But when I was looking for these photos, I found this article on the Register. And it's talking about how GE is planning to continue to run their nuclear power plants in Canada off of a PDP-11 until 2050. So even though it may sound crazy, I like to think of our guys as like nuclear engineers. So, and if there's anybody from GE here that wants to run your nuclear power plants on Kubernetes, come talk to us. So the project was to deploy a Ticketmaster product into a production-grade Kubernetes cluster and equip the team with all the knowledge to be able to support it in production. It's a fully remote team of 6. Most of them are here today, even in this room. So we got a lot of work to do, right? We don't really know how many clusters we need to have for our environment, right? We've got to figure that out. We don't know which architecture is quite right for what we need to do. We don't know how we know this one now, but how we're planning to deploy and test the cluster once we've built it. And we're really not sure about what the best networking option is to use at Amazon when you start to factor in the multi-AZ deployments. But it's a totally legit team. We've got our own logo. We've got our own beer koozie up here somewhere. And we've got stickers. So these are the milestones. Basically, we start with a simple cluster, and then we start to add some complications on top of it, right? We'll figure out how to optimize it, how to make it enterprise ready, how to make it AHA, make it easier to use by application teams, figure out how we're going to do the on-call production support and all this other stuff. But now we've got Tectonic. We partnered up with CoreOS yesterday. We really see this as a way of making this whole thing happen within a few weeks rather than a few months. They've got a lot of the enterprise stuff figured out, so we're really planning to take advantage of that. And we brought in other people to help along the way. So JJ was here. I don't know how to see him right now. But so we had a friend to come in. We spent 3 days locked up in a room, reviewing everything Ticketmaster does, reviewing everything Kubernetes can do, and kind of trying to map the two together to figure out what the best model is for us to manage it, both like technically and as an organization. So these are all the kinds of things we covered, pretty standard stuff. And then we had Kelsey Hightower come in and work with the team. So he really walked us through a lot of standard production deployments that he's seen working with other companies. Kelsey's got a lot of real-world knowledge and really is like a great person to talk to if you ever have the opportunity to do that. You know, we came out of, or going into it with Kelsey, we really had this grand scheme of what we wanted to build. But he was like, hey, you know, just start with the basics and then start to build from there as you need it. Don't go complicated until you have to go complicated, right? And then he gave us a bunch of unbiased recommendations on Kubernetes deployments. And then we brought in CoreWes, and they gave us a bunch of biased recommendations on Kubernetes deployments. But it was great because their architecture was a lot like the architecture we were planning to build. You know, so we had a ton of stuff in common. We all got along really well, and that's really what led to the partnership. This is the architecture that we had. You know, it is, of course, will change over time. But you can see we've got 5 etcd nodes and an autoscaling group, another 5 for Calico, the autoscaling group of worker nodes, and then we've got the 3 master nodes where we run the controller, scheduler, auth layer, DNS, the dashboard, and that kind of stuff. And then we're planning to use Elk as our log aggregation and solve all of our logging problems. Prometheus for the monitoring and the metrics, Calico for the software-defined networking and the policies, GitLab for our CI/CD pipelines, and Linkerd as a service mesh. So, you know, now that we have this where we're planning to go with it, you know, we're really into Linkerd. The guys over there have been great. The client-side load balancing you could do with it is awesome. You know, when Twitter came out with Finagle, it looked great, but you can only use it if you're using services that were like Twitter's. Linkerd makes it so you can use it on everything, right? We've been around for so long, we've got every version of software that's come around in the last 40 years. We can almost use Linkerd in between all of those things, right? It speaks HTTP. Also super impressed with Prometheus. We've already started to convert some applications that are using OpenTCP to emit metrics in Prometheus, and then converting them back into OpenTCP just because we know we want to get rid of OpenTCP and start using Prometheus. There's also some really cool open tracing stuff happening. Basically anything CNCF is doing, we're trying to do now. Like, they keep coming out with awesome stuff, right? We were already using Fluent, so the news from yesterday is not that big.
Cool. So as I mentioned earlier, right, our goal is really to share about what we're doing, how we think about Kubernetes, how we're solving our business problems with Kubernetes and the ecosystem in general, with container orchestration in general, right? And how we're thinking about solving enterprise caliber problems and running, you know, $25 billion of commerce on top of these platforms. We have to ensure that we have the right strategies, right? And one of those is really ensuring that we are betting big in the right communities, right? And we, you know, definitely feel like the Kubernetes community is the community that we want to be part of, and we want to sort of encourage others to join us along the journey, right? And be, you know, add more anchors of big companies into the community so that it can continue to thrive, grow, so that some of these problems get solved and we divide and conquer, right? Like somebody eventually is going to figure out the best way to do auth. Somebody's going to figure out all the problems that you have to do if you're going to do it at scale, right? So we are definitely excited to be part of the community, and you'll definitely see us around. Definitely stop by and say hi. We got a fair amount of folks, all these guys on the slides. We're hosting a party tomorrow night after the CoreWes party, so the after party tomorrow night at the Hard Rock. We're using our own ticketing system, Universe, so we'll tweet out the link. That's one of our DIY products. So sign up for it, come out. We've got a live band coming, and hopefully we're using our products to unlock unforgettable moments of joy on Wednesday night. So join us.